Today, we're hanging out in my kitchen and we're cooking 3 manly recipes. Hey guys, Kira here from 50 Shades of Mom, back to share another recipe with you guys, and today we're talking manly meal prep. So I always love to set my husband up with tons of homemade food when I leave to go out of town, and this is actually the footage of the food that I set my husband up for when I went out of town for Christmas. I know the footage is kind of old, I just hadn't gotten around to sharing it yet, but I didn't want to not share because one of these recipes is something you guys have been dying for me to share. Another one is a house favorite, and then I have a new recipe that we absolutely loved. So you guys always ask me to share my steak sandwich recipe, which is like a take on a Philly cheesesteak. So that's in this video, along with my homemade chicken parm, which is definitely takes the cake as one of the house favorites. And then a new recipe where we're making like a Tex-Mex version of Hamburger Helper in the pressure cooker. So I'm going to take you down to the counter and show you what I prepped for my hubby while I was gone this holiday season. Okay guys, so for our first recipe, we're going to start off with the recipe that kind of spawned the entire idea for this meal prep video, and that is because this is for my steak sandwich. So every time I put this on the meal plan, everybody is always asking for the recipe. It is super easy, and so I figured I would show it to you guys today. So you need 2 kinds of shredded cheese. You need about a cup of mozzarella and a cup of either cheddar cheese. That's a Mexi melt I get from Walmart. Then you're going to need some mayo to wet the bread. That's actually very important. You're going to need 1 small onion. You're going to need some peppers. You can do as little onion and peppers as you like, or whatever kind of peppers you like. I'm just using these kind because it's what we have on hand. It's the sweet peppers we get all the time and we love them so much. Then here is the steak that we're going to use. So this is a London broil that I got really cheap on sale, but I'm going to like thin fillet it and then cut it into strips and then cut it down like into chunks so that that's what we're using to stir fry the meat. Then you're going to need your seasonings, which is just garlic powder, salt and pepper, and we're just going to use that to season the meat and the veggies when they're in the pan. And then this is the loaf of bread that we're going to put the meat and cheese and veggies on, except normally I buy the everything loaf and Walmart didn't have any. So that's fine because we're going to make our own everything loaf, and I'm going to show you how I do that. So this is the everything but the bagel seasoning from Trader Joe's, and then I just have some fresh peeled garlic here and some olive oil. So we'll just get a nice garlicky oil and we'll baste the bread and cover it with the seasoning, and then it'll bake on and it'll be our own homemade everything bread. So now we're just going to start off by getting the pan nice and hot with some olive oil, and we're going to get our garlic roasting. It takes a little while for that to get like a good flavor. So while the oil is getting hot for our garlic, we're going to slice our bread. It was partially a little frozen, so it took me a little bit of time to get it open, but then once that's open, I put it off to the side and started cutting our veggies. So how you cut these veggies is completely up to you. Some people don't like a lot of peppers and onions in like their Philly cheesesteak. I happen to really like the flavor that the peppers and onions give to the meat as they're cooking. So as you guys can see, I only thinly slice them, but not so thin that they're going to dissolve when they're cooking. I like them to have a little bit of bulk, but if you want your onions to kind of disappear, you can dice them or cut them real fine so that they kind of dissolve as you've cooked them in the pan and in the oven. The same concept is going to apply to those peppers. You can cut those peppers as fine or dice them or keep them as large as you like. As you can see, I like them kind of large because we like that. So the oil is ready and I threw my garlic cloves in there so they can start roasting, and then now it's time to cut our meat. So the knives that I'm using, I'll make sure to link below. These are my Miracle Blade knives. I have legitimately had them for 15 years and I've never had to sharpen them again. They are a wonderful tool for cutting and getting a really good cut on the meat. So as you can see, I took that London broil and I like thinly sliced it in half. So I completely had like 2 full steaks again. And I still kept them one on top of each other, and then I made strips, which made it easier for me to just cut little chunks. And even this piece over here was so thick, I was still able to cut through it a little bit more and get like another layer. That's part of the reason why I like this cut of meat. It is so thick that it allows me to manipulate how I like it, and it allows me to get a good piece of meat as opposed to like these little pieces that again do what the vegetables would do and somewhat dissolve while cooking. So now that our garlic is all roasted and it gave a good flavor to our oil, I'm just going to use a basting brush now and baste the top of that loaf bread that we already cut so that the everything but the bagel seasoning seeds will stick to it. I'm pretty generous with these seeds, but I really like a good everything flavor. Now I've moved our little garlic cloves off to the side, but I'm still keeping them in the pan because they're still roasting and giving the oil that flavor. And then now the peppers and onions have joined the oil. So we're just going to season that with a little bit of salt and pepper. I love seasoning my veggies. You would not believe how much salt and pepper does for your vegetables when you salt them, especially when you're sauteing them. The salt really pulls the flavor out. It is quite delicious. So just a little hint if you don't season your veggies when you're sauteing them. So now that the veggies are cooked all the way through, I'm going to remove that garlic clove, and then I'm going to add that meat. And then I'm going to salt, pepper, and garlic powder that meat. It really just those little few seasonings do such a difference for when this is all cooking down. And we're just going to mix that up and then let that cook thoroughly all the way through. So you can see there that I actually took that garlic cloves, the ones that we roasted, and I like broke them apart and smeared the inside onto the bread. So that gave the bread like a roasty garlic flavor. And then I covered the bottom with mayo. You would not realize how much that mayo plays a huge part, but the fattiness adds such a wonderful flavor. Even if you don't like mayo, you won't taste mayo. It just, the oils all mix together and just add a wonderful flavor to the meat. So then you're going to cover it first with that mozzarella, and then now it's time to lay your meat down. Now you may notice as I'm putting the meat on that it's not like completely well done. There are still some pink spots, but remember, we're going to stick this in the oven to get it all melty with all the cheeses. So it's going to cook a little bit more in the oven. So I undercook it just a tiny bit on the stove so it doesn't overcook in the oven. Now we're going to take our cheddar cheese and we're going to cover that mixture and we're going to place it in the oven, and then when it comes out it looks like that, and it looks so stinking good. And I cut it all up, and this we actually ate for dinner that night. We ate half of it and then I froze a bunch of pieces for Daryl for when I was gone. But look how yummy that looks, like all roasted together. Excuse the little piece of mac and cheese that got stuck. I usually don't have a whole lot of mac and cheese on my plates because I don't eat a whole lot of mac and cheese. And so we're also having it with watermelon. I've been obsessed with watermelon lately. It has still been super fresh. This is super cheesy and absolutely delicious. So I think you guys will love it if you give this recipe a try. And now we're on to one of my favorite recipes, and one of the things I feel like I've perfected over the years. I feel like people in my neighborhood smell my chicken parm and they come running. So here's what you're going to need. The ingredients you see here. I have about 2.5 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken breast that I'm going to fillet down. You need some breadcrumbs. You need a couple of eggs. You need some sauce. Though the sauce that you see here is my own personal sauce. You can use whatever you like, but I have mine here that I froze and defrosted suggested for this recipe. You need a little bit of milk, you need some vegetable oil, and you need some olive oil, and then you also just need some shredded mozzarella. So the first step that we're going to do is we're going to need to clean up this chicken. One of the things I do to save cost and money is to just buy the boneless, skinless chicken breasts that are not filleted already, and then I fillet them myself. Again, I really love my knives, and that fillet knife does wonders for me in the kitchen with being able to cut anything like a butcher would. And I must say that my dog absolutely loves the protein in the raw chicken. If she smells me cutting it by any means, she is literally at my feet looking for it. So I usually trim all of that down, and that goes to the mutts, and then I use all of the pieces here for my actual meal that I'm using. And I did a fair amount of chicken parm here, and we did not eat this for dinner. This was complete meal prep, but this was actually for a holiday dinner. So I'll get to that part in a second, but I did just throw some oil onto the stove, and if you did see, I threw vegetable oil in, and then I added some olive oil. I actually love the flavor of olive oil, but I like to cook my chicken cutlets in vegetable oil. So you could use canola oil or something, but that's still what I prefer. And so I add a little bit of olive oil to get the flavor as well. And then while that's heating up, now we're going to prep our station for getting these chicken cutlets ready to go. So I always add 2 eggs and then a splash of milk into a bowl, and I got it good and mixed up, and then I just put my breadcrumbs on a plate. You can use whatever breadcrumbs you like. I just happen to like the Italian breadcrumbs by Progresso. It's what my mommy used, my grandma used, so it's just like what's in my head to use that. And then you're just going to coat your chicken cutlet. So as you can see here, I dunk the chicken cutlet in the egg, I get a good coat and batter on it, and then I cover it with the breadcrumbs, and then I put it off to the side. And then once our oil is hot, we're going to stick these chicken cutlets into the oil and give them a good fry. So now that our oil is good and hot, we're going to layer the chicken into the pan. I do suggest for any cooking of anything in oil like this, they do not crowd the pan. The more that you crowd the pan and you bring the temperature down, the longer that it takes for things to cook, and they cook unevenly. I really like to get things like a good golden brown on the outside, and then I love when you flip it over and you can tell that it's got like a really good crisp to the outside. I feel like it just locks in all of that flavor. So once you've cooked all of your chicken and everything has been fried and cooked all the way through, now we're going to layer it in a pan. And now I put it in a big baking dish because I ended up taking this entire baking dish and wrapping it with saran wrap and tin foil and dropping this down into the deep freezer, because this tray was actually made with the intentions of Daryl and Paul to have this as a Christmas Eve and Christmas Day dinner. So all they had to do was boil a pot of spaghetti water. I had some more sauce for them to defrost, and then they took this tray of chicken parm out, which was already cooked for them. So all I had to do was heat up these pieces, and it was like a nice holiday dinner. So after I placed the cooked pieces of chicken into the pan, I just covered it with my sauce, and then now I'm just covering it with the mozzarella, and then we're going to stick it in a 350-degree oven for, I would say, about 30 minutes. If the cheese gets too brown for you, pull it out. Like this is almost just a tiny bit too brown, but of course I was playing with the camera, and so I just threw some parsley on top, and that was it, guys. It is good to go, and we are on to the next recipe. So our next recipe is a pressure cooker recipe, and it is like a Hamburger Helper, but a taco edition. And it sounds super good and super easy because besides sauteing the meat, most of these pressure cooker recipes are dump and go. So you need a pound of your favorite kind of pasta. I'm actually using this winter snowflake pasta from Trader Joe's. I just thought this would be kind of neat and like a little twist for Daryl to have something fun when he was eating his pasta. And then here I have the Fiesta blend. That's that Mexi melt I get from Walmart. I have about 2 pounds of ground beef here. I have 4 cups of water. I have some taco seasoning mix and then a container of my sauce. So I've been making tons of sauce and freezing it because, as you guys can see, I use a lot of my own sauce for recipes. So the first instructions are to set your Instant Pot or your pressure cooker, whichever one. Mine is from Kasori, to the saute function, and once it gets hot for you to begin to saute, we're going to dump our ground beef in there. I really need one of those meat mashers. Like, I have to go onto Amazon and like find that one that breaks up all the meat. I feel like everybody and their mama has one but me, and I need it. So I'm going to season my ground beef with salt and pepper. I really like to season my meat when I'm cooking it down like that. No matter what recipe I'm using, I feel like every meat needs a good seasoning. And once you're done sauteing the meat, that's it. You're going to start with your dump and go. So you're going to put a 1/4 cup of that taco seasoning along with the full package of your pasta, your 4 cups of water, and your container of sauce, whichever one that you're using. You would need a full jar. I actually did go back and fill my Tupperware with water a little bit. I shook it up and poured it back in. You could do that with your jar. And then you're just going to set it on a manual pressure for 8 minutes. Once it comes to pressure and it's all done, you're going to do a quick release and let all of the pressure go. And then we're going to open the top once everything is done, and we're going to dump in our cheese. So you need about 3 cups of cheese, and we're going to dump that in. We're going to give the pot a really good stir, and then we're actually going to put the lid back on for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and let all that stuff get like melty and cheesy. So once that's all melty and good to go, then we are going to be good to go. And I will say, you guys, this was so stinking yummy. Like, we had some that night, and then I was still able to freeze 2 huge portions. I plated it like I would anything else. I put like crushed nacho chips, some red onion, cilantro, sour cream. It was so super delicious. We absolutely love this recipe. So let me know if you give this a try, or any of these recipes a try. And if you enjoyed this meal prep video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. I do my best to try and post at least 1 meal prep video a month. For everybody else, guys, I love you so much, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.